Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to Fashioning the Future, our special forum on sustainable practices and digitization for the fashion industry. Now, conceived with a holistic approach that embraces the entire fashion ecosystem, this forum is set to provide practical insights as well as innovative ideas for businesses as they navigate fashion's ever-changing landscape. Our presentations as well as panel discussion this evening will undoubtedly be of great value and insight to designers, marketers, innovators, manufacturers, and sustainability teams in apparel and associated industries. At the outset, a big thank you to all our partners, Lectra and Apparel Technologies, as well as Shangri-La Hotel Colombo, our host hotel. To formally welcome you all to our forum proceedings, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to invite the head of the Department of Textile and Clothing Technology at the University of Moratuwa, Professor Samudrika Vijaypala. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As the head of the Department of Textile and Clothing Technology, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome all of you to the Fashion Forum in line with our grand fashion show, graduation fashion show, on behalf of the department. The aim of this forum is to raise awareness of the global trend of change in changing over to sustainable practices and digital technology. That is the theme of this forum. I take this opportunity to welcome all of you to this forum. I am grateful to the sponsors of this forum, namely Apparel Technologies and Lectra. Without your support, we would not be able to produce this grand event. Again, I would like to extend my warm welcome to Vice Chancellor, Professor Kapila Perera, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Mahanama, who were the live wire behind this grand event. Next, I would like to welcome all the resource personnel, those who are present here. First of all, I would like to welcome Founder Head of the Department of Textile and Clothing Technology, Emeritus Professor Lagdas Fernando. You are always welcome, sir. You are the Founder Head of the Department of our Textile Technology. Next, I would like to welcome Professor Ajitya Alvis, Senior Professor, Department of Chemical and Process Engineering. Next resource person is Mr. Handum Sakaria, DGM Patagonia MS Active. Next one is David Leprovost, Channel Sales Director, South and Southeast Asia, Lectra. Michael Steen, Director Innovation Center, Nike 360 Holding. I warmly welcome all of you as resource personnel in this grand event. At last, but not least, I would like to welcome all the distinguished invitees, academic and non-academic staff members on behalf of the department. To all of you, thank you for being here and enjoy the forum, Fashion in the Future. Thank you very much.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the business side to fashion is, as you know, changing at an unprecedented rate, and a new breed of strategic visionaries and innovators, entrepreneurs, must look ahead in preparing for that change and in being change agents. Our preamble is by a personality known for his big ideas and reputation for inspiring leadership. In addition to his vast industry and academic experience, he is also a conservationist with a passion for wildlife. For opening comments, it's my pleasure to invite Professor Lagdas Fernando, Emeritus Professor, Founder, Head of the Department of Textile and Clothing Technology at the University of Moratuwa. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I must first of all thank the head of department, Professor Samudriga Vijayapala, for asking me to do this introduction to this forum. A wind of change is blowing through all businesses and industries. It has been for some time, or some years now, and it is gathering momentum to such an extent that almost everyone can feel it and inevitably be affected by it. To weather this storm, one has to face it squarely and run with the wind. Taking shelter and allow the wind to pass by will get you stranded. The use of computers and digitalization have increased rapidly within the apparel industry, as with others. The core apparel industry has tentacles stretching into many other areas and businesses. Within the industry, the first process to be digitalized was the marker making, which involved the storage of graded pattern pieces digitally. Lectra, the French company who are sponsors today, and Gerber, the American company, were the two main companies that brought this technology to Sri Lanka, followed by Tukatech in more recent times. And of course, there are many more now. Digitalization was then extended forward into production and backwards into design. Almost at the same time, digitalization made inroads into retail in the form of electronic points of sale and store layout and control of the business at all stages, including ERP, range planning, dealings with suppliers, manufacturing, and warehousing, dispatch, and after-sales service. Digital management, information systems developed to improve all these areas. However, the sewing floor, or the machine floor, has been the most difficult area to be penetrated by this new wave of technology. It has always been labor-intensive and difficult to automate. To replace the dexterity and skill of a well-trained operator because of difficulties in dealing with the inherent drape and handling characteristics of different fabrics. Nevertheless, automation and robotics, or the new term, the sobotics, are being introduced extensively in the introduction of high-volume merchandise, such as T-shirts and underwear. Parts of garments have been automated for many years, and new innovations appear regularly, including automatic machines for making darts, pockets, pleats, seams, plackets, waistbands, buttonholes, buttons. Settings and features of such machines can be pre-programmed electronically to improve quality and efficiency. The feed mechanisms of machines, that is gather and ease, gathering fabrics when joining larger piece to a large piece to a smaller one, can be programmed. Also, thread tensions stitch counts, needle positioning areas have also been increasingly automated. In 2019, the ITMA exhibition, I'm sure some of you will be going there, will focus extensively on the inroads of automation and digitalization into the sewing room or the factory floor. While the use of such digital technologies increasing the technology itself continuously maturing to bring about all these islands of digital improvements and information features and functions shaped into a digitally holistic entity. As with every other industry, it is inevitable that the apparel industry will encompass the digital evolution in the future. According to Lectra, the majority of products could soon be digitally conceived and designed and assembled and worked upon by industrial robots which receive instructions without human intervention. The 4 pillars of digitalization are big data, Internet of Things, IoT, platform economy, and artificial intelligence. These promise perhaps the most profound change that fashion has undergone since the dawn of large-scale manufacturing. In the Asia-Pacific region, the digital economy is evolving at different speeds, probably slower than the developed world. There has to be a concerted effort to ensure that no one is left behind as a result of digitalization. In Sri Lanka, the SME sector of the apparel industry is the most vulnerable in this respect. Actually, the SME is the one to get the maximum gain by digitalization. Also, the fact that 42 of 135 digitalized economic corporations are based in Asia underlines the importance of the digital economy in the region. The Asia-Pacific region amounts to 74% of the world exports of information and communication technology, ICT goods, led by China, which exported such products to a value of more than US dollars 600 billion in 2015. India is a giant in terms of software service exports, which was US dollars 53 billion in 2016, which is 3 times higher than those of the US. E-commerce is also growing fast in our region. There are 3 of the 4 largest national e-commerce markets in the world are in our region, namely Japan, China, and the Republic of Korea. Developing economies accounted for nearly 90% of the 750 million people that went online for the first time between 2012 and 2015, led by India at 177 million people and China 123 million. However, for many economies, the degree of digitalization still remains limited. Very soon, increased use of the technologies underpinning the digital economy, such as advanced robotics, AI, IoT, cloud computing, big data analytics, and 3D printing, will have transformative effects on production and trade activities. The importance of leveraging new digital technologies in support of sustainable development cannot be overemphasized. Digitalization will enable small firms in developing countries to connect with global markets and open new ways for small businesses to generate better incomes. There are also risks and challenges of digitalization. This is especially true of countries that are inadequately prepared for such digital economy or change. Digitalization can lead to increased polarization and widening inequalities. Productivity gains may accrue mainly to a few already wealthy and skilled individuals and large companies. Another concern would be the growing use of data flows and IoT, which raises worries over data privacy and security. There is also a risk of some jobs becoming obsolete as a result of digitalization. These disruptive technologies will put at risk, according to UNCTAD, 80 to 90% of the jobs in the business process outsourcing, retail, textile, and clothing trades, according to the studies of economists in South Asia. Further, UNCTAD reports stress that preparing for the digital economy requires concerted, holistic, cross-sectoral, and multi-stakeholder approach to policy making, and key national policy areas include ICT infrastructure, education, and skills development, competition, science and technology, and innovations, and fiscal issues, as well as trade and industrial policies. I think Sri Lankan government is paying attention to these areas. Hopefully, the small sector will understand the implications of not getting involved. If you stand by, you'll be left behind. National policy making also needs to be augmented by international support to prevent the evolving digital economy leading to widening digital divides and greater income irregularities. It is important to ensure that more people and enterprises in developing countries have the capacity to participate effectively in a digital economy. So I think I have underlined the importance of this change that is happening. You can't close our eyes or hide your head like an ostrich and say it will go by, pass. No, it won't. Daily it's engulfing you, and if you stand aside, as I repeated before, as I said before, you'll be left behind. And the ones who are skilled and are energetic and innovative enough to embrace this technology will benefit largely. But however, we hope everyone will do so, because otherwise it will lead to, as I mentioned, differences and irregularities in income levels of peoples and companies. Already we can see the big companies doing very well with using these technologies, and in Sri Lanka, and the small companies either attaching themselves to the big ones or closing down. So this should not happen, and this is something that GSP can't help. Use the GSP also, you need connectivity, and that's the digitalization message that I would like to place before you. Thank you.
A big thank you to Professor Lakdas Fernando for highlighting the importance of embracing change and avoiding the ostrich effect. Thank you very much once again for those opening comments. Our next address, ladies and gentlemen, discusses how to engage fashion consumers in sustainable consumption and lifestyles, and the role of sustainable production practices in driving sustainable consumption. Our presenter obtained his PhD from the University of Cambridge and has worked at the University of Reading, also at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. His experience includes a tenure as science team leader at the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology and as a project director at the Coordinating Secretariat for Science, Technology and Innovation, Ministry of Science, Technology and Research. He is a member of the Intellectual Property Advisory Commission of Sri Lanka and is a member of the Governing Council of the National Occupational Health and Safety Institute, Ministry of Labour, and also a founder director of the Sri Lanka Green Building Council. His interests are in eco-innovations, food process engineering, environmental engineering, nanobiotechnologies, bioenergy systems, and he also possesses the distinction of being the founder-president of Lanka Biogas Association and a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences in Sri Lanka. With a presentation titled Catwalk Beyond 400 ppm, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Ajit Dialvis, Senior Professor of the Department of Chemical and Process Engineering at the University of Moratuwa. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon. First of all, let me thank the organizers for the invitation extended to say a few words in this very interesting and important occasion. What you see here my right here, to your left, is one of the most famous pictures, and somebody actually stated this is the most important picture ever taken. And it was taken by Bill Enders in Apollo 8. And in the first mission, and when men reached out from the Earth and saw the Earth for the first time through the lunar landscape, and this we call as the Earthrise picture. And happened in 1968 in December. And why it's important, this is the first time we human beings saw our own planet through a lens that we made, and we saw this blue planet, a very, very fragile planet, and understood for the first time our life depends on this. This is where we are, and we have only one this planet. And we are sandwiched between perhaps Venus and Mars, two uninhabitable planets, and it's time to look after this. And we probably were doing at the time things that were not really conducive to the well-being of this planet. And that's what I want to say. The catwalk beyond 400 ppm. And why 400 ppm? Now this is referring to the carbon dioxide concentration. And interestingly, 399 or 401 doesn't really mean a mega difference, but this really gives us a round figure and something to think about. And because this value in carbon dioxide, actually, when it momentarily went up the scale from 400 ppm on 10th May 2013, previously, the planet Earth has seen this 3 million years ago. So having an existence as Homo sapiens, about 10,000 years of agriculture history, and that's what we became as the kind of human being that we are known. And we started our own journey of innovation and all sorts of improvements and etc. But that was a 10,000-year history. And this value of carbon dioxide was 3 million years before. And the world was very different, the climate was very different. So technically, on this day, when we saw this figure for the first time, we were heralding a climate that we are not used to. And we may not know the consequences if we go on adding. And that's why we really need to change our thinking and our behavior to understand this effect and not to allow a runaway effect. And what is interesting is 2016, September for the first time saw the 400 ppm above become a norm. Whereas on the May 2013, it was just lifting off that value. The Mauna Loa Lab Observatory, the Keeling curve, touched this value and identified it, yes, but it came down. But 2016, since then, this is a common figure that we are going above. And if you see the last July, the average 408.1771. And we have, in June, recorded 412 ppm too. And what we do not know is what's the tipping point, whether it's 420 ppm or 450 ppm. And it looks very, very close as the time moves on. We just had the warmest June the month ever recorded. That's the past June. And we can chill ourselves, we can air condition ourselves momentarily. But the point is, what's happening? And that's where we have to think. And that's why we need the change. So it all boils down to the human imagination and the human enterprise, and we fuel desires. That's one of those things that we have been very good at. And if you look back in 50s, when the mass production and invariably the mass consumption happened, the dreams of consumers were being fueled. And heaven is in what one can buy. So many things were coming out, so many innovations, and we were never the same after that. I mean, because so many new things, so many things to work on, so many things to enjoy. And we thought the life is very small. I mean, the one single life, the lifetime is too small, and yet there's so many opportunities. And the industry that we discussed today is one of the biggest industries and one of the commodities that we are very used to from the very beginning. So if you talk about the global textile industry, we may be talking about in last year or so, $3 to $4 trillion industry. And you may know your figures very well. And then we talk about 400 billion square meters of apparel that we would have produced. And in that process, we talk about 60 billion, perhaps, on square meters on the cutting floor waste. So it's interesting, hope the figures, but 400 billion as a top one and a percentage that we lose out as at the factory level itself, then of course the rest on a post-consumer basis. So we consume and discard. But even at present, we talk about 20% recycling. 20% of recycling that's happening. So 80% is not. And landfills, the dumps, and all sorts of things are being taking these waste. And these waste generates from resources that are not renewable. And that's the important point to remember. Sorry, can you get the next slide? So the fast fashion has become a mantra today. And we talk about design houses, talking about 12 portfolios or 12 collections, and some 52 collections. That means one collection per week. And you may end the fashion show, and digitalization, everything, you may have it on your show, more likely you will have it on your website immediately. So the what was on the catwalk in a minute, an hour later may appear on the website and available for people to purchase and use. So you're making certain things that was just before that time obsolete, and this is the thing. So that's what we push. So fast fashion is something that we now have embraced. And we may be very proud of the fact that we can service the demand, we will do things on the run, and it's all available. And this all started with one retail analyst. And at the end of the Second World War, the machinery was fully on, a production machinery, and so you had to do something with this machinery. And so we had Lebov, the retail analyst, who actually came up and said, look, now to make use of this, the machines and stuff that we have, we should make the consumption a cult. We should really promote consumption. So the burning, the discard, the use, we should be part of our life. And that's how the machinery of the war machine turned into a manufacturing machine. And the consumption, the marketing, the advertising all played its role. So it's a kind of a very interesting statement that came out because one had to make use of and keep the jobs going. And the economic things that were, the numbers that were coming out, we just can't able to push back and say, look, we have to take a cut. No, it was not possible. So you have to come out with a different system, and here is the consumerism started as a result. So we know about it. And of course, the facilitation of the consumerism took happen, and we know that marketing and credit, while once it was in the dreams or in the heaven, but the heaven was brought down to earth by the credit card, right? And we know it. It's there. So we know the feeling. We know the feeling. Events are created. Events are fostered. And sustainability is today, we have to think, look, this cannot go on. We have to find a different path, because that fragile planet that we saw in 1968 is now undergoing rapid change. And the point is, we do not know when is this tipping point is going to come, whether it's tomorrow or 2 years later. But one thing we know is, unlike Arrhenius' calculation, which showed 1,000 years for the climate change, unfortunately, that luxury of 1,000 years is no more. We are going there fast. We are getting there fast. And we can measure CO2 now and see that ppm is really creeping up. And that's something for us to change. So this is what the VP of, retired VP once said, that the socialism failed because we were not telling the economic truth. But he also went on to say, forget about the socialism part, the capitalism is failing because we are not telling the ecological truth. And that's a very, very strong truth. And unfortunately not very well understood, the ecological truth and the ecological cost. So we are not really factoring that at all. And that is where the pathways has to diverge. The processes that we are going to engage, we need to change. And this is a very, very simple statement and a very interesting, a very powerful statement. A person coming from the petrochemical industry, by the way. So we know that as we speak, California has wildfires. And we take this season now, it's wildfire season. And we talk about how many houses and so on. So we saw the Hurricane Harvey in Texas, and then of course that hurricane season was pretty wild. And we know the dangers and the damages that are happening. And we see the wine country, the Californian wine country, this was 2017, the fire. And similarly we can say the current figures. Currently things, it's a little got now under control, but things are happening. And one of the richest states can perhaps engage in it and come out of it and may say, look, we are moving on. But unfortunately, the reality is the frequent, what I call the high impact events, what are not supposed to be frequent are becoming now frequent. And that's, it's very, very serious. And we know in our own way, the last 3 years, the month of May has been a month of agony because of our own disasters, whether the floods or the droughts. And what's interesting for this year, though we managed it very well this year, much better, we had the highest rainfall in an area that was suffering for drought in the last 2 years, Putlam district. So the extreme events are not getting extreme anymore, they're becoming too frequent. And the question is, unlike California, we just can't afford these things because we know the moment we have one event, and these are not very high speed winds or rain or even 150 millimeter, yes, but for us, the impact is very high. And we take a hit on the economy straight away. And you talk about the social issues and the lives lost and certain damages, it's extremely high. And we just can't afford the frequency. So it's something that we need to factor in. So it's in our own backyard. And we talk about the climate departure. The recent Yale study has shown that between, if you take the 1960 and 2005, the climate departure is hitting many cities, and Colombo is no exception there. It's not the very dark red, but it is slightly orangish red that we are talking about 2033. And what is climate departure? In a very simple sense, if you talk about 1960 to 2005, the average temperatures, if you take the coolest temperature, right, and if you're trying to be the warmest temperatures, you will have these variations. But in time to come, the coolest is going to be warmer than the warmest of the past. So that means that particular climate that we experience is going to be no more. We are going to have a new normal that is very warm. And it's not going to be helpful. We know a slightest degree of ocean temperature rise and the amount of vapor that's going to come up and the winds and the rain is going to be a very terrible effect, terrible impact as an island nation. So these things we should understand. The climate departure is real. The model may change, certain inputs may change, but we are following a path that is getting us into this climate departure perhaps earlier than what we anticipate. But we are not ready. To be ready is not to have much more defenses, but to understand the issue and to change ourselves. So it's very important. So we need to bring the circular economy. That's what Ray Anderson did in the interface, cradle to cradle. But do we practice, all of us? We still recycle 20%. 1 ton recycle, we can say multiple tons of carbon dioxide going out and save resources and so on. So it's very, very important, and we have to be innovative, right? So Ray Anderson showed it, and the business of the business is not business is now being shown and been understood but not followed. So we need to go beyond the lip service. So we need to herald in the social responsibility part, sustainability part has come in. We know with the Rana Palasa in Bangladesh, and then the subsequent declarations, the textile industry moved more into the social part first. Now we are on the environmental part as well. But we need to move very fast in this. So we know with life cycle analysis, a lot of details we can very well work on. So the data are with us. And analysis is quite feasible. It's the mindset and it's the thinking that we need to bring in. So we know our water footprints. We know our virtual water footprints. When you do it somewhere else and send it somewhere else, and the amount of resource consumption elsewhere, are we really valuing the resource that we have been consuming, or are we putting artificial prices, or negating, or not internalizing them? So we know these things. And sometimes we may have to ask the question, do we really want to stone-wash denim? Can we do without that? Or can we do it something differently? Do we really need it? So it's sometimes the human imagination need to question our own needs and desires, because at the end of the day, some correction to our path has to be taken. And it's an imperative that we do that correction. So that's the point that we need. We need to go green. We need to grow green in all our ways. And our profits needs to be natural profits, not exorbitant profits. The profits for taking the just rewards for the risk taken. And that is perfectly feasible. And that should be the way forward. So we know we lead the world perhaps in the green factories. And it's been happy to be part of some of that. So we also have our products which are carbon neutral and sending a very life cycle analysis across the value chain and ensuring carbon neutrality. And you can go carbon negativity maybe, right? But there's a strong concepts that can be driven. It should not be supply driven. Can we do by not by demand driven? Can we do by supply driven? Can we say that this is the way we are going to do things, because it not only helps you, but it also helps every one of us if we do that change. And that's the mindset change that we may require. Because it's also important, while we do the concepts of green, we don't engage in greenwashing, as Guy Pearce would say in this, and even in this book, the Sri Lanka figures too. So I won't go into the detail, but it's interesting that we understand just what we are doing and the sincerity of purpose of what we are engaged in. So it's not just greenwashing, but it's real green practice. So it's important for us to know. So we need to engage in innovation. Einstein said, you can't use the same processes that landed us on the problems, so we need to think differently. So we again have toolkits, right? If you look at the lotus effect, and also if you look at the peach fruit and so on, we see the Japanese astronaut not washing the underwear. But I can also imagine the scenario of not washing and then forget the washing machine, forget the detergents, no need for water, and there can be a huge resource difference. But it's an innovation, it's a mindset, it's possible. So the scientist David Sohn, who worked with the peach, came up with nanotechs, and we have the lotus effect, and we have the stain-free and all sorts of things. We all have developed also what we call as a Sri Lankan sun and wear. We use the ultraviolet rays, so using titanium dioxide. So these are possibilities. So innovation has to kick in for us to change. So it's important that we work on innovation, because the same ways that we worked before cannot give us the solutions to the new pathways that we need to understand. So we need that different mindset. So biomimicry, like we learn from the peach, we can learn from the gecko, and we can learn from the beetle, right, of the the desert beetle, who actually from the structure on the surface collect water from a very dry desert. And that channeled it through the microstructure to his mouth. So today, harnessing water from air with textiles can be a very interesting exercise. And why don't I harness with my clothes, right? So these are all opportunities with biomimicry. There's so much with biomimicry that we can do. And the tools for doing up to the atomic level are made available today. So it's not a case of lacking resources. It's a case of lacking imagination, perhaps, and understanding that we need to be different. So it's like 3D printing. Now, it's very interesting. This is the first 3D printed wedding dress, and it came from Sri Lanka. The point with 3D printing, the additive manufacturing is, today if you talk about reshoring rather than outshoring, reshoring may be made possible by the 3D additive printing. So you can change the whole supply chain. You can shrink the supply chains with 3D printing. So we must understand the power of these technologies in transforming what we now take for perhaps granted can be completely changed. And that can be a game changer from a Sri Lankan point as well, if you really understand the potential. And bringing the industry for robotics. We are just starting SERA. Hopefully, we are looking at textile industry as a first case application to ensure that, as Professor Lagdas mentioned about the sewing has not yet escaped, but we would like to tackle that part in that, because we know there are 200,000 jobs and so on, many thousands of jobs, yet people are not taking. The answer may be in robotics and AI. So it's important that we change. Not sure whether the video can be run here, but a little bit. So with imagination, you can change the catwalk, right? We don't demonstrate what we have been demonstrating, but if you run this, anyway, I won't run it. This is the spray-on garments. When a designer met an engineer and asked, can I spray the garment? So this is a little old, I know it's 2005, but the point is this opens up medical textiles and so many other things. Electrospun fibers can do wonders now, right? Japanese are coming up with wristband dialysis machines using electrospun fiber, so making the conventional dialysis obsolete. So the point is, there's so much of opportunity in different ways of doing things. You don't have to go to the tailor shop, you go to the hardware shop and buy the container, right? And so it's completely different, but of course we still need the green solvents. And like the scientist who looked at dyeing and put the dye on the mulberry and then saw the cocoon coming up dyed, completely changed the need for dyeing subsequently. Maybe have taken a big pollution step out of the industry altogether. And maybe another scientist who actually came up with, okay, I don't want to kill 50,000 worms at the end of getting my silk. I can actually allow the cocoon to, and then allow a little less silk. But so I dye my silk, differently, and I allow the animal to escape too. So you can have what you call ahimsa silk, which has been there, right? So the things can be very, very different, and this is very eco-innovation. So we need, as students and teachers, maybe to engage in a different lexicon, that all our conventional words that we are used to, the design to be co-design, efficiency to be co-efficiency, innovation to be co-innovation, chemistry to be green chemistry, rather than learning this and doing this as CPD, I think the new world demands that we start with green chemistry, not chemistry. We start with eco-innovation, not innovation. So this is what we need to do from day one now. And it's like, okay, why don't I replace the quaternary ammonium compounds with cyclodextrin from starch, or chitosan from crustaceans, the prawns, or even take alginates from the weeds. So I take my azo dyes, I take my quaternary ammonium compounds out, and I bring green chemistry, the green catalyst in the enzymes. So this is what we need to do. And we know that Anita Roddick showed with an example from Sri Lanka that you can have the nature and you can have a big business based on nature and without even advertising, right? So the body shop, it was a Sri Lankan woman using the scape, apparently the first indication to her that this is a possibility, and that was one of the first facial washes. So it's important just not looking at material, but having that business model. The textile industry needs that, right? The body shop equivalent. And from a Sri Lankan point, those who have seen the Buddhist philosophy around this, you may have seen in the Light of Asia that how the clothes and is recycled completely down to plastering the wall. So you can look at recycling and upcycling. These are the things that we will reinvent the past. But above all, it's very important finally to conclude that sustainable development will not come unless we have sustainable consumption. Sustainable development will stay just a word and a dream because it's our internal practices that we need to modify. So we need to understand that with 400 ppm crossed very much now and heading towards the tipping point as a standard, the time available is not that great, but we don't know when. But if you wait, the time may be just too late after the tipping point. So it's important that we understand the power of SDG 12 on the sustainable, responsible consumption and production. Thank you very much.
Encouraging us to rethink the status quo and also the importance of sustainable consumption alongside sustainable manufacturing. Thank you very much to the professor for handling that presentation. Up next, ladies and gentlemen, we have a case study on designing sustainable supply chains to meet sustainable consumption, sharing the Patagonia story with a presentation titled Responsible Supply Chains to Meet Consumption Needs of Tomorrow. Up next, we have a qualified marketer from the Chartered Institute of Marketing UK, whose role at MAS Active is to onboard and establish new brands while managing one of the most sustainable apparel brands in the world, Patagonia. It's my esteemed pleasure to invite Deputy General Manager Business Development at MAS Active, Hamdoom Zakaria. Let's give him a warm welcome.
With all the market disruption happening, the apparel industry and the brands going into different levels in the marketplace, we see the digital platform, digital brands coming into play, disrupting the whole brick and mortar in the marketplace at the moment. And on the other side of the world, talking about manufacturing, pricing challenges, and also to cope with them, we are doing innovation, automation. So plenty of things happening in the marketplace as well as in the manufacturing base. But there is one brand which is taking it very easy, nice and slow, to make sure that there is a way of doing business in a much more sustainable manner. Let me take you through the story of Patagonia. I'm sorry about that.
It is no secret that America needs more farmers, but we need the tools to be successful.
Revolutions start from the bottom.
In fall 14, we had 11 fair trade certified styles. In fall 16, we're going to be at 200. And in fall 17, we're going to be at 300 styles, and that's 30% of our product line.
Okay, my content today is to talk about the brand as well. For the students, probably they will know what Patagonia is when it was established, and also the material sourcing and the manufacturing side of it, and what they do for the retail. Let's look at the mission statement of Patagonia. They build the best products, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environment crisis, ideal for a sustainable brand. This brand was founded by Yvon Chouinard in 1973, 45 years back. Yvon actually is a vivid mountain climber by himself, and that is where he got inspired by looking at the tools that he is going to use during climbing has been harming the rocks. And he later realized that if the climbers keep on doing these things continuously, he probably will not leave back a mountain for the coming generation to climb as well. So that's where he got inspired, and later he moved into apparel. So it was founded in 1973. Currently, the CEO is Rose, and the number of employees, 1,000 for 2017. And they just crossed the $1 billion mark. So I'm proud to say that when we started business with them, it was a $614 million business back 4 years back with Patagonia. And we see the rapid growth on a year-on-year 14% this brand has been growing. And the products that they do is all for outdoor. And the headquarters is based in Ventura, California. Like Professor Ajit said, even though the wildfire is on, I'm so glad to know that the teams are well set there and the office is in place for us to carry out business. This is something that I wanted to talk about. This is an advertisement which came on a Black Friday back in 2011, where they came on the New York Times by saying, "Don't buy this jacket." That clearly endorses that this brand is there for sustainability and making sure that we reuse, recycle, and avoid buying in new products unnecessarily to harm the environment. So the impact on usage of water and the amount of carbon emittance to the environment is purely based on this advertisement. So on a 10 to 12% sale increased after this advertisement came on paper in 2011, November, Black Friday. The Won't Wear program for Patagonia. This is something that Patagonia drives very strongly to make sure that the garment is a lifetime endorsed or guaranteed product that they will give for the consumers. Here what they do is, Patagonia also has its own mending and repairing center. Initially they started with their own brands being repaired, but now they even bring in other brands as well to repair and reuse. Another thing that Patagonia does is they have a mending truck which goes around the US to make sure that those products which are being damaged can be mended and reused. So this is a big program for Patagonia to initiate the sustainability. On the 1%, or here it says 100%, but behind the 100%, there is a 1%, which I would like to talk about is every year, 1% out of their sale goes to the planet, which means they spend this money in different environment organizations to make sure they safeguard the environment. On the 2017, the Black Friday, they forecasted a $2 million sale, but they hit a $10 million sale on the Black Friday that came up in last year, and the whole 10 million was used for the environment costs. So the Patagonia value chain, we have a material team which sits in Ventura. We have the fabric mills based in different parts of the world, majority of them coming from the Far East. And then we have the factories and the subcontract or the facility providers on embellishments. And then you have the retailing and the consumer part of it. So the material is 100% nominated at the moment because they do all due diligences before they provide it to the plants or the factories that they work with. So all quality standards are looked at. They work on 2 seasons and then make sure that beforehand, well in advance, the fabric, the yarn, the traceability, everything is tracked perfectly before they move into the concept stage. The types of fabric, eco-fabrics that Patagonia uses are the hems, the tencels, and they also work on organic cottons on some of their cotton products, and the recycled poly and the nylon. So the recycled poly mainly comes from the plastic bottles as a waste, which comes in. So there are a few challenges that we go through as vendors. For example, if you look at the sublimation printing that goes in most of their base layer products, on a light color, using recycled polyester fabric based on the plastic bottles that we use, the contamination rate is very high. So on a light color, these are points that students can think about, talk about, when there is huge amount of contamination taking place, Patagonia doesn't use very heavy chemical to take them out. They go on a very mild version of it. So during sublimation, during curing process, we probably see certain marks of those damaged areas due to this plastic contamination that takes place. So the brand itself has re-elevated by re-looking at these products, and they still absorb it rather than unlike other brands who will reject it purely because of the sustainable journey that Patagonia works on.
In the early 90s, we committed to reducing the negative impacts of our polyester clothing by decreasing our use of petroleum. To achieve this, we created the first fleece jacket made from recycled polyester soda bottles. The original color of the marsupial pullover came from green soda bottles, which at the time weren't separated out from the clear ones. Since 1993, we've eliminated the need for over 20,000 barrels of oil and have kept millions of plastic bottles from the waste stream. As technology has evolved, we have expanded our use of recycled polyester from the original fleece in our chinchilla marsupial to some of our most technical products. We keep working to reduce our impact on the environment while making products that set the standard for quality and performance.
So the prerequisites of fabric mills, as I mentioned before, Patagonia takes the total ownership of maintaining the quality standards of the product that they do, and they have the clear traceability of the yarn. For example, if you look at organic cottons, mostly some of the products are being currently done in India. They have the full traceability of the farmer and how they take care of them, and the quality standards, the price that they pay for that yarn, is it fair? They go into so much of details on the traceability side. And on the chemical side, even for the mills, they make sure that they are not hazardous products that they use. and also the social responsibility. They look at the well-being, even on the backward integration part of the business, rather than only on the manufacturing side. So all these stringent standards are being looked at the raw material prior to finalizing them for each season. What do they do from the factory side of it? So there is a lot of areas that they look at: workplace, the health and child labor, forced labor. These are in detail being looked at. Periodically, they do audits to make sure that we are in place. And then we have the Patagonia fourfold approach supply chain decision-making team. Before they go into making a decision on a silhouette or a type of fabric or anything to do with innovation, these 4 teams, they keep looking at all those projects before they put them out. So that is one big area that Patagonia consistently works on. On monitoring factory mills, they audit 100%. So these are certain standards that they maintain. On top of that, if you are looking at any innovation, we spoke about innovation on moving forward. Patagonia doesn't stop just because of the sustainable journey. But the innovation that we are going to do for them, they will think twice on the elements that we are going to use on those products. For example, certain products that we do for heart monitoring during exercises. So the chip, the battery that you use, which should not impact the product that they are doing on a later stage. Or maybe if you are going to dispose that, probably it will harm the environment, which is against the philosophy of Patagonia. So these are the areas that they really look at, apart from the regular auditing processes they look at. This is one area that everyone who manufactures for Patagonia is inspired by, the Fair Trade certification. So the Fair Trade certification comes from the US. It's a fair trade organization which drives it, and Patagonia jumped into it and then make sure that they take care of the worker force, the teams which are touching the product is something that they do. So they pay 1% of the FOB to the workers, and they make sure the organization who is enjoying this facility opens a separate account for the workforce to make sure after every shipment, 1% of that consignment in dollar value goes into their bank account. So these are monitored carefully. They are very conscious about how we manage it. There is a team which is being put up in each factory, which is called the Fair Trade team, that looks into the well-being of how the funds are being managed. So these are not being given by cash. They want certain products or projects that they need to do to make sure the people are happy who are touching the end product of Patagonia. So if you look at it, more than 42,000 workers have benefited out of this. And our organization is also lucky to make sure. You saw on that video, the number of styles each season has been increasing on fair trade purely because the end consumer is embracing this project, that the people who are doing these products are being taken care of and they are happy. So they are not only looking at sustainability on materials and products and what's happening to the environment, but they are also very key to make sure that the people who touch the product are also happy. The happy index is more important for them as well. What do they do to the end consumer? There is this footprint chronicles, if you go on the Patagonia website, that clearly shows the traceability of that product. Each plant has been mentioned there. The background of the plant is mentioned there. Even the support services, the printing, even if there is an embroidery, if there is a washing that takes place for the product, the profile of those facilities are being put on the Patagonia footprint chronicles so that the end consumer can go back and see where these products are done. This is something that, unlike other brands, Patagonia stringently follows and does it for the end consumer. So, we see brands coming up with so many commercials to make sure that how they market their product, sell their product under this severe competition that takes place in the marketplace. But Patagonia, during their 44 years of journey, They have never ever gone and promoted on commercial, making sure to sell a product. But they made sure that put out a video as a commercial to make sure to safeguard those heritage lands which are currently being threatened at the moment, to tap those, to make sure they will use it for certain natural resources that are coming up. So Patagonia put out a video to gather support from the public in the United States to make sure to safeguard those heritage lands. This is just a quick video which I picked up.
Public lands have never been more threatened than right now, because you have a few self-serving politicians who want to sell them off and make money. Behind the politicians are the energy companies and the big corporations that want to use up those natural resources. It's just greed. This belongs to us. This belongs to all of the people in America. It's our heritage. I hope my kids and grandkids will have the same experiences that I have.
Well, we do business purely because it's all to do with profits for us. But at Patagonia, making profit is not the goal, because the Zen master would say, profits happen when you do everything else right. So that's the statement that Yvon Chouinard believes in. You saw him on that video. He inspires so much to make sure. Even if you go to his office, you hardly see him seated there to meet him or say hi to him. There is no big strategy that he works on. He's a simple person. So almost 3 times I visited to make sure to see how he is and what he does. It's very difficult, because either he is doing a social service project somewhere, or he's making sure there are certain things that he does with the environment to make sure the business is in a good place. The environment is in a good place. So the brand is ready, and as vendors, most of us are ready. So there are so many things that we can do. The learning comes from Patagonia is, how do we bring those learnings into our country, our region, to make sure that we embark on a journey unlike Patagonia. So the question is, are we also moving forward along with a brand like Patagonia? It's an opportunity. Currently, they are working with 3 vendors in Sri Lanka, and they are endorsing that make sure that it's a long journey that they want. They are very keen to work on projects in Sri Lanka. They worked with us on an environment sustainable project as well in Wakarai, where the war-torn area, where the trees were destroyed. They came for a project of 1 million rupees they spent to make sure to replant trees to safeguard the environment as well. So there is more to do. What they can offer, what we can do for the brand is more important. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and present Patagonia. Students, this is just a tip of the iceberg for you all to know about the brand, but we are here. You can approach me. We can talk about it. There are so many good things that can happen. Thank you very much.
I'd like to take a moment to once again thank our sponsors and partners, Electra and Apparel Technologies. Thank you so much for making this forum possible. Also to Shangri-La Hotel Colombo, our host hotel. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who registered to this forum, you might be aware that there is a WhatsApp group in which you have been included. Now, all these speakers will be part of a panel discussion that will be happening a little later on. So in case you want to direct questions to the moderator, you can use the WhatsApp group to do so. So do keep that in mind as you take down notes from all our presentations. All right, with that, we move on to our next presentation, and it's on digital technologies and tools in the fashion supply chain, and we'll take a look at their relevance, implications, as well as impact on creative apparel design across the manufacturing process. The presenter has accumulated 20 years of professional experience in CAD/CAM industry and has developed competencies in project and change management within diverse industries, including fashion, apparel, footwear, automotive, as well as furniture. In his present role at Electra, he takes care of channel operations in South and Southeast Asia and is based in Singapore since 2006. He was previously in charge of Electra's business development in Africa, Eastern Europe, and Northern Europe. with a presentation titled Digital Supply Chains to Meet the Demands of the Digital Consumer. It's my pleasure to invite David Leprovost, Channel Sales Director, South and Southeast Asia Lecturer. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Ayubowan. Together with our business partner, Apparel Technology, Lectra is very proud and excited to be the main sponsor of this forum. This is our modest contribution to the Sri Lankan industry that has been continuously over the years invested in automation, efficiency. So that's the minimum we can do. Let me continue with first also congratulating the students graduated this year. You are starting a new career into a very exciting industry full of opportunities. And today, what I would like to share with you is Lectra vision on the new business model through our experience and contact with many customers all around the world, being fashion brands, being manufacturers, and the disruptive technologies that we are using and developing to support this new business model. Before starting, just a few words about Lectra, if you're not really familiar with us. We are the market leader worldwide for CAD solution and also cutting room solution, from design to cutting room management with software solutions like design software for pattern design. Maybe some of you knows about Modaris, marker making solution, and equipment with automatic cutting machines. And all this also together with consulting to streamline processes. We are very proud of having also working with all the major manufacturers in Sri Lanka. We are also very, very proud also to have an advanced relationship with a large organization like MAS or Brandix. So we do aim to invest further into this local industry. So let me start with first a quick introduction on the 4 mega trends that impact the industry today, and it's already happening. First, it's about the new consumers, the millennials. Then all about the new technologies with the digitalization. Then the emergence of the Industry 4.0. And lastly, the China impact. I will develop the first 3 points just after. Let me just focus shortly about China. Whether you want it or not, you will have to face China in your career. You be with them or against them, but they are a game changer. They reshape the world. With their way of consuming and their way of producing. Okay, so it would be, we could spend hours on the subject, but you do have to take into account how to deal with Chinese consumers and Chinese manufacturers. Okay, so let me start first with the new consumers. Basically, that's you, the students graduated. You are the millennials, and you are the one changing the rules of the game. So right now, you are becoming the largest. Sorry. Yes. Okay, you are becoming the largest number of consumers all around the world, and you are really different. You are different because you are digital native, you are connected, and you are social media. And this is how you differentiate with my generation, the generation of my parents. You purchase garments differently, and not only garments, but let's focus on garments. Okay. And you want the best, for the best price, personalized goods with the best quality. So this is a big challenge for the brands. This is a major challenge for the manufacturers, but no choice. Everybody has to adapt, because for the brands which do not understand how to deal with the millennials, they are very soon out of fashion. Okay? So the millennials are reshaping the apparel economy as consumer. And this is the truth of today. Tomorrow, with the next generation, born after 2000, that will be also the next consumer with buying power, there will be new rules of the game. And hopefully, they will be even much more sustainable in the way they consume garments. The next mega trend is digitalization. It's not an easy word to pronounce. So we're talking about IoT, Internet of Things, talking about cloud solutions, talking about augmented reality, virtual reality. You can already make a simulation of a garment on a 3D review with different fabric, with your own avatar to check the fit. And there will be also solutions around, more and more solutions with artificial intelligence, with the system self-learning based on the data. Data is the new business currency. All those solutions generate data. And thanks to those data, there are new business models arising, and that also push for new operational excellence. Now, if we talk about the Industry 4.0, this is related to the fourth industrial revolution. So you might be wondering what are the first three revolutions. So let me refresh you quickly. The first revolution was the steam at the end of the 19th century with the famous train. Okay, so it was steam that was able to make movement of machineries, and this was the start of the automation. The second revolution was the electricity that speed up the automation. The third revolution was the computer, okay, with much more communication, much more automation. And now we are in the crossroad of, we are at the beginning of a new revolution, definitely. And this is all about real-time communication. Thanks to all those technologies available now, the supply chain is totally revamped. All the actors, all the components of the supply chain can now communicate together in real time. And to me, it would not be a surprise to see in an organization like MAS in Sri Lanka that they will be connected to stores in the US or in Europe to see what's the behavior of the consumer and to anticipate their production. Okay, so think about the potential, the new business model through real-time communication between all the actors of the supply chain. And the factories will be in the heart of this new value chain. Okay, and this is for me, okay, maybe here we have some lean specialists, and you might not agree with me, but maybe this is for me a new lean concept, how to work more efficiently all together. Okay, so these are our understanding of the mega trends that are impacting the industry, with the new business models being a shift from mass production to profitable, large-scale, personalized production. So we see today that most of the typical mass producer, they are slowly shifting to mass customization. That means that they still produce more and more, but with a lower quantity per styles. So this is a real challenge for the manufacturers. Okay, and for agile companies that are used already to produce small volume, they are slowly shifting, and for sure they will have to manage made-to-measure. Made-to-measure also is a major trend in China, in the US, especially for the millennials. They do want to have made-to-measure solution, made-to-measure garment. And before, the issue was that it was expensive, and also it was quite a long process, and a lot of manual process with a tailor. Okay. Tomorrow, with the new technologies, there will be a lot of automation, and it will be profitable and sustainable to make made-to-measure. Okay, so this is a reality coming, and you have to understand it, because that's your future. So now that we understand at least our vision of the new business models and the mega trends, let me share with you the disruptive technology that we are embracing and that and in which also we are investing. So first about cloud. Cloud is no longer just a data storage. Cloud is now a database service. There are many service opportunities around cloud. We have our standard classical software solution. Some of you know about Modaris, Diamino for pattern design and marker making. Also CAD planning solution, design solution. So those, our customer so far purchase the licenses and install on a desktop. From today, okay, our customers now will no longer purchase a license. They subscribe to a service. Okay, a service to use the license, but not only the license, also to subscribe to a platform to have access to much more different services. This is exactly the same concept as you are already experiencing with music. You no longer purchase the music. You subscribe to a platform like Spotify, Deezer, or Apple Music, okay, to access to a service. We do aim to have the same concept, so all our solutions are progressively available on a SaaS concept. SaaS means software as a service. And let me share with you, okay, unfortunately we don't have time to develop all the services, but let me share with you some typical services that you can expect from a platform. So typically, you will have access to, for a pattern designer or for designer, you will have access to your own libraries on the cloud. So you don't need anymore to store on your own server, or even though for some companies you don't have anymore to store in a room a cardboard pattern. And you will access to your own library, but also to external libraries. You will be able to access to other content, to buy content that is not your main expertise. You will be able to access to a community of users, like on Facebook or social media, solutions, platform. You will have access to e-learning solutions. You don't need anymore to learn the software through a classical classroom where you sit for 1 week. Okay? With online universities, you have e-learning, tutorials, you access to the information you want at the time you want. This is the famous ATA-WADAC, anytime, anywhere, any device, any content. And the last example of services, even though there are much more services even not listed here, is to have a platform as an intermediate between fashion brands and manufacturers, sharing the same data stored in only one place. You don't need anymore to convert files into different formats, and this is where you lose information. So with the same platform, you ensure also data integrity. And this applies also to a full process of collection management or product development process, for example, costing, where having all the different departments, being merchandisers, designers, costing department, production department, pattern developers, okay, being all connected to the same platform, accessing the same data at the same time, okay, with everyone contributing to the development of a collection or to the development of a style. And this platform is the single version of the truth. No more paper on a folder, no more files stored on a computer, and you don't even know which version is it. Is it still the right version? Is it the latest version? Okay. So through platform, cloud platform, this will eliminate manual tasks. This will streamline the collaboration between the different departments. This will also enable the better integration of subcontractors by sharing data to external partners. So if you're able to control your process, you reduce drastically your risk. Any failure is a major cost. Okay? And if you control your process, you can speed up the development to ensure the success. Okay? So those technologies will bring a new way of working together. This is already this is already implemented with most of the PLM solution, PLM being the product lifecycle solutions. But this is just the beginning. We just scratched the surface. There are much more ways to work together on simple scope. Okay, so today all the PLM projects are a bit complex, but tomorrow it will be very, very simple to implement, and this will be a common way of working. Talking now about cutting room management, this is the Internet of Things, means all the objects can communicate together. This is the example of the Lectra cutting solution named Vector that is already embedded with sensors that can communicate to our data center with technical data. So that means that every day we are able to analyze the technical data, technical performance of our customers, and we are able to predict a potential breakdown. Because we can see abnormal parameters, abnormal behaviors, okay? We can predict a breakdown. We immediately inform our customers and our local service partners to act immediately to prevent a breakdown, okay? This is just the beginning, because IoT generates a lot of data. And companies tomorrow will be able to unleash the power of data intelligence. Okay, data is the new business currency. This is about intelligence. This is an insight to fuel the company decision. Okay, and this is the best way to sustain a performance thanks to productivity reports, dashboards, KPIs, key performance indicators. So that's really important. That's how you can anticipate a risk. That's how you can sustain a performance. And think about the power of artificial intelligence. Tomorrow, the system will be able to learn automatically by itself, or to generate best practices, or to, it will be able to push some recommendation of parameters to ensure the right cutting quality, to ensure the right productivity. So this is just a quick introduction of the potential. 20 minutes is quite short to develop in details, but I just want to make you understand that our mission is really, Lectra mission is really to empower our customers to succeed as they step into the industry of the 4.0 era. We are in the phase now already of a transition. Everybody is going into these directions. We are here to support through the technology. I would like to conclude with a short video. A short video that summarizes everything I just told you. Can you launch the video, please?
Istuti to you too. Thank you very much for that presentation. A look at Industry 4.0, ladies and gentlemen, and also technologies that are revolutionizing the fashion and apparel design space. Thank you very much for the presentation once again to David Leprofst, Channel Sales Director for South and Southeast Asia for Lectra. Up next, we have yet another case study on Nike, which discusses the role of the digital consumer and how available technologies support the design of digital supply chains to meet demand. The presenter is a graduate from Boston College, USA, and is specialized in communication and marketing, and is today the Apparel Innovation Director for Sri Lanka, establishing and building a brand new innovation creation center with a world-class manufacturing partner. Handling a presentation on how Nike apply digital supply chains to reach the digital consumer, we have Director Innovation Center, Nike 360 Holding BV, Michael Steen. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you today. I had an interesting tagline that I was going to start this off with, but I think based off the previous conversations, it's clear that I'm here to tell you the story on how Nike is not going to become an ostrich. So in order to set that stage, I'm going to play a short video that'll give us a foundation to play off of.
What's so different about the future? It's the same kids coming through. All guts and vision. No fear. Doing it just for love. The kids haven't changed, but the future has. The future will be measured in fractions. It will ask how high, how fast, how strong. And you will know, because the answer's in your pocket. The future will kick lame excuses out of bed, put a cheering crowd in your ear, and push you all the way to a new PR. The future has the world's biggest sports clubs, and you're invited wherever you are, because it will make you better. The future spots talent early and knows it's never too late to unleash your potential. Just don't ever expect to get it handed to you on a plate. The future remembers that your left foot's a quarter size bigger than your right, and has a product made for your game waiting at the counter when you step through the door. The future thinks there is no finish line, and rest days suck. But after you've showered off, you still want everyone to know you're a player. The future believes in athletes, tall ones and short ones, fast ones and slow ones. Because as long as you've got a body, you can compete. And however the game changes, we will be there to serve and enable you. Welcome to Nike.
So there's a couple quotes that stand out for me. The first one is, it's the same kids coming through, all guts and all glory. That never changes. But while the kid hasn't changed, the future has. And the other quote that strikes me is, however that game changes, it is our duty to be here to serve and enable that consumer in that new space. So when we look at the new digital world order of digitization in the supply chain, we should really be asking ourselves, how do we serve and enable that new kid in a modern digital world? First, we should have a look back at the context that we find ourselves existing within. The most obvious topic of conversation as of late is the retail apocalypse that has impacted the marketplace. In particular, the retail environment in one of our key strategic markets, North America, has experienced a significant shift. It's a shift that is driven by a new consumer that is simply not shopping in the traditional sense. So therefore, if the old model that you're basing your business off of is that old model of buying and selling, that is completely flipped. A look at some of the numbers is quite telling. In 2017, there were over 6,400 retail closures. 500 plus were in Sports Chalet and the Sports Authority. Those are key retailers for Nike. Our top retailer, Foot Locker, alone has shed 450 stores in the past 10 years. Those are the top 3 retailers for our brand. That's a monumental shift. And that was just in our industry. The brick and mortar demise has not stopped there. You look at something like Toys R Us, which is a family location. That has closed over 800 stores. Radio Shack, which I grew up on, has closed over 1,400. That's massive. Mall vacancies are currently sitting at 8.6%. That's the highest since 2012. The biggest real estate opportunity is what to do with the millions of square feet that are all of a sudden now available. But new, connected communal workspaces is the most recent formula looking to capitalize on that availability. As they succeed, they will create a landscape that intertwines the consumer's lives, their work, their sleep, and their shopping. All of this has been driven by a new consumer that is interacting socially in a new digital way. So while that kid has not changed, his demands and his interactions with the brands have. The kids today expect a brand to deliver what they want, when they want, packaged how they want it, for the price that they want it, and most importantly, at the appropriate time. Essentially, they are demanding a curated for me culture. Coupled with this is the fact that they are always on, always connected, and they're very comfortable with things like AI or virtual reality. That's scary. They also have introduced an important concept about product ownership. They are no longer looking to purchase a product, but rather rent it for whatever their purpose or whatever their time need is. The question from a product design perspective is really, what's the job to be done? Uber figured this one out and has definitely mastered it. Actually, it's because of the companies such as Uber that we have to thank for this new consumer and this new consumer expectation. The competitive landscape is ripe with brand new industries, new players offering new levels of personalization and services. And these are large organizations that have power on an unprecedented scale. When we look at our competitive landscape today, we recognize that it is no longer relevant to focus solely on the traditional competitor of the past, the Audis, the Pumas, the Lulus, the Under Armours. Really, we must take into consideration that our strongest competition today are the likes of Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, Kickstarter. A good case in point. So this is an Austrian athlete, Felix Baumgartner. I apologize, I brutalized his last name. But essentially, he's standing there 40 kilometers off the Earth's surface. And he's prepared to set a world record. During his free fall back to Earth, he went past the speed of sound, roughly Mach 1.25. Now, that doesn't mean anything to me, but that's really fast. And basically, his margin of error was nil. You either come in first place or you die. This is the new athlete. Now, look at the picture a little bit closer. Not one athletic apparel or footwear company is present. Who is? Red Bull, an energy drink company. What is Red Bull doing in outer space? Better yet, Red Bull, who doesn't consider themselves an energy drink company, they're a media house. What is a media house doing setting new boundaries? So it sounds pretty daunting. So where does that leave us? Well, really, how do we serve and enable that kid, that consumer, with speed and agility, with innovation at scale, at a global scale? In order to do this, we feel that we must look at it from end to end. So we break this down and look at it through the lens of how we create, how we make, and how we deliver. Digitization must exist through all three phases in order for you to stay relevant or to prevent the ostrich effect. So how we create today has become the most obvious sign of the digital effect. It is now expected that you have digital 3D rendering capabilities as a designer. But that's not enough. What will set you apart from others is if you can design in 3D, but also speak a programming language. That's unique. That's your competitive advantage. And here at Nike, what we always do, what we're maniacal about, is placing the athlete at the center of the equation, always. But our athletes are not just existing in 3D. They're in perpetual motion. They live in 4D. So the environment in which they exist is constantly changing. Their playing field is very urban, and their training regimens are constantly evolving. We need to see them in this new habitat in order to create or to design for them. At Nike, we also have an internal mantra that's basically ingrained into all of our heads. We have to learn it on the first day of work, but that's this notion that we must always listen to the voice of the athlete. This has served us really well, and it's been our laser-sharp focus that permeates everything we do. The beauty of the world that we live in today is that the voice can be tracked with mountains of data. The athletes today are faster and stronger than they have ever been before, and our ability to capture and understand their needs has never been more challenging or accessible. This is honestly the digitization of the athlete. At the same time, we're also experiencing a manufacturing revolution, or 4.0 industrial revolution. And this is generating a brand new industrial era. Making things today has honestly never been more exciting. We all know what 3D printing is and what it can do, or honestly what it can't do. That's just the beginning. Those are the baby steps. In order to be relevant, you have to master that and expand off of that. This is critical. So at this point, when we look at the fact that industries are starting to cross-pollinate, or a Medici effect is starting to take place, we now have an ability to see our design before we even open a mold or before we cut a pattern. Better yet, we have an ability to crowdfund our concept before we even have a business plan. Those possibilities are endless. Just look at Instagram and the amount of new apparel brands that are popping up almost overnight. The playing field has never been more level. This shoe up here represents a great leap forward in how we make at Nike. We basically took a machine that was cranking out sweaters. For those of you my age, you might remember Bill Cosby. The Bill Cosby sweater machine was cranking out beautiful sweaters for him. We looked at it from a different lens, and we said, hey, why can we not reinvent that machine and start making shoes, components? This was a first. This was a revolution in the footwear space that unleashed capabilities that we've never had before. We could actually control things like modulus, which was brand new to the footwear industry. I've been making shoes for 20 plus years, and I'm still trying to figure out what modulus means. As if that wasn't enough, we also took that same sweater technology, learned from creating shoes, and reapplied it back into the apparel industry, which is where it came from. The muse here was the woman's sports bra, arguably the most complex garment on the rack. We engineered it from essentially 44 components to 2. Let that sit in for a moment. That's complex simplicity. And we did that through the lens of digital design and digital programming, skill sets that we did not have in apparel 5 years ago. I would venture a guess we were still trying to figure out what it was 2 years ago. I'm going to break real quick and give another insight in terms of what drives Nike, in terms of how we create and how we make. Video help, please.
We have been listening for 50 years, listening carefully for the sounds that no one else listens for. What do inches sound like? What do seconds sound like? What about pain? Glory? How about losing? The sound of winning? We love the sound of winning. So we listen first, then we make. We make with our hands, with our own materials, in our own laboratories and workshops. Then we listen more closely. We make again. We break more passionately. And do it over and over until for a moment, it's perfect. And then it's like it never happened. We gather up the inventors, the creators, and the believers, and we cut them loose without rules. Just a shared, common goal. We believe that when we listen without a final destination in mind, when we make with complete freedom, when we break without fear, this is how we find the next thing. The leap forward, the game changer. We listen, we make, we break together. Then we start it all over again.
So I pretty much watch that every morning before I go to work. Gets me super excited. I absolutely love my job. But that really surmises how we make and how we create in the digital sense. But that's not enough. Now we must be able to serve and deliver to that athlete. From their first step to their last, we want to be part of that athlete journey. In order to do this, we must meet the consumer where they are, not the other way around. The consumer lives in a highly urbanized environment that is wildly interconnected. Success is predicated upon an organization's ability and capacity to understand and meet those demands. This is the new generational story. In order to meet this new requirement, we have to look at it through the lens of reinventing how we buy. A great example of this is our new Retail of the Future experiment that recently opened in West Hollywood. This is a picture of the inside of the store. It's locally relevant retail environment that has been driven by consumer data. We took input from several hundred consumers from within that zip code. To localize that, that means we basically studied Colombo 5 or Colombo 7 and built a retail environment targeted towards that. So we took this input from the consumers over the course of a year and crafted a solution for them, by them. West Hollywood is an attempt to lure that digital shopper who's not going to change. The digitization hasn't been embedded in everything they do. This is an attempt to start to mold that digital shopper and provide personal services and elevated experiences that they've never had before. The goal is to seamlessly mix the digital space as well as the physical space. And as you walk into the store, you'll encounter mannequins that provide you head-to-toe solutions and curated outfits that fit your style. Why? Because we have the data from the zip code that tells us precisely what's happening and what those trends are. You can book time with a session expert, not a salesperson, a session expert, and join them in a lounge that feels more like a club than a retail environment. The store will turn product offerings every 2 weeks based on consumer data mining, and will stock locally relevant colors and styles. 2-week replenishment is one thing. 2-week style turnover is unprecedented. A new feature that I also love about this retail environment is the app, the Nike Plus app, that will accompany you through the entire journey and through the whole process. So while you're shopping, you can stop, pick up an item, scan it with your phone. That'll pull up product information. It might even give you a video of that product in motion. It can tell you what's the availability of sizes and colors. You no longer have to wait for a salesman to disappear for 10 minutes, only to come back and say, sorry, we don't have your size. Better yet, you can ask for that product in your size to be placed in a fitting room so that it's sitting there waiting for you when you arrive. And on your way, as you pass by other garments, your app will actually help you shop the look by making additional suggestions. You like something? Just send it to the fitting room. So when it comes time to check out in the future, you will simply walk out of the store with an auto purchase. You don't have to sit in line. You don't have to wait for a sales clerk to ring you up. You grab the product, you go. And if you don't even have time to walk into the store, don't worry about it. We'll have you covered, because you can do all of this from the comfort of your own home or wherever you are as that mobile consumer. And when you place that order, you can just simply drive up and curbside will bring it out to you. That's the speed of digitization. The store already knows your sizes, your tastes, and most importantly, your motivations. It's just being packaged per your lifestyle. So what are the tenets that enable us to serve and enable this new consumer? We break it down to really three things: speed and convenience, enabling the consumer the self-service opportunity, and an experience that is very personal and curated. So the description of a retail apocalypse is not accurate. We're not experiencing the death of retail. Far from it. We're experiencing the reinvention of it. So you'll also notice that I called this West Hollywood store an experiment. That's because it's a solution in time that captures the best of what we know today in the context of the future environment. And it will ebb and flow as that consumer continues to evolve and define the experience for us by them. Ultimately, the athlete decides. We must be humble enough to listen. Thank you.
Moderating our panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, we have Shehani Gomez, the Deputy General Manager for Innovation, MAS Active Trading Private Limited. I'd like to give her a warm welcome. Over to you, Shehani.
Thank you, Dino. So thank you, gentlemen. I think those are really fantastic presentations. Congratulations on that. I'm sure the audience is motivated. Of course, I've got a grand total of 3 questions on this WhatsApp group, so hint, hint, please send in your questions. And while the audience gets busy on the phones with questions, I think it's a good time to have a great conversation around the topics of sustainability and digital, and how are these trends really coming together. So I'm going to start with Professor D'Alvis. I think you spoke about the catwalk beyond 400 ppm. And I think we had several other speakers talking about the revolution that's occurring on the other side with so many digital resources coming together. How do you see these trends merging? Do you see them as competing trends, or do you see them as complementary trends?
I think the answer would be both competing and complementary. It's the way you use it, because you hear the word digitalization and saying, okay, very fast access to whatever you want. So that probably is what we call competing, because I may say, look, we will switch from fast fashion to slow fashion. We are looking at from fast food to slow food scenarios. So then, but the point is the technology enables you to actually accelerate it much further. So that means a mindset saying maybe necessary, because technology per se is neutral. It's just how you use technology. So technology gives you much. I would never say that. We say no to the technology. Right? It's just how we try to facilitate the use of the technology and embed it in our day-to-day work. And probably that's where the shift in mindset may dictate or should dictate how we embrace the technology as we move on.
David, you were speaking about Industry 4.0 and how the industry is changing and lecturers enabling that change. How do you see digital resources coming together to support some of these sustainability realities that we may need to face in the next 2 decades?
Yeah, I think there is definitely there is no competition between sustainability and digitalization. Definitely digitalization can support the sustainability. Sustainability is about the elimination of waste. So all our solution is to eliminate waste, to reduce the waste by saving fabrics, by also eliminating the prototypes, by reducing the reject from consumers, by ensuring the right fit. So we can always argue on some details that might not be sustainable, like data center that generate a lot of heat and that are definitely not sustainable. But then we have also to look at the overall benefits and also on what is the market demanding. And definitely the market is demanding for sustainability. So I know also that I had also very interesting discussion in Sri Lanka with manufacturers about how to or even eliminate the waste from cutting. So how to use also recycled blades for cutting solution, or we can recycle also the paper. There's waste, the plastic. So I do see here a very good challenge, positive challenge. And this is not only about digitalization, it's also about a global process.
Okay, thank you for that. Professor Fernando, thank you for your talk. I think that was very enlightening, and you gave a real good head start there. Can you tell us, you were talking about automation and the different trends of automation that are impacting the textile and apparel industry. From a sustainability lens, what are the key technologies that you think will impact our future, the industry?
Well, I think it was mentioned by lecturer also what the technology is going to be like. And basically, technology it's going to be very environmental friendly. It will be more sustainable and environmental friendly than the processes that we go through now. And the technologies will try to eliminate waste of material, waste of energy, and bring basically the design concept and designing will take a different role. Designers will be playing a different role. Today, for example, we went and saw the flatwork exhibition of the designers who are going to put their designs on the catwalk this evening, today. And it was really a static exhibition, which saw lots of hard work in books and all hard copies of the work that they have done, and then some of the one garment on a display. But in the future, probably this same exhibition would take a different role. Probably the designer would stay with a computer and a screen behind, and all the flat work, all the development, everything will be shown, and it's going to be dynamic, not a static. So this is something that's coming very soon, and we all will have to learn to live with this technology and how to make use of this technology.
Thank you. My next question is actually collectively directed at Stino and Zaki. Zaki, maybe you can speak about this more from an MAS angle, and hopefully, Stino, you can address it from a Nike angle. And I'm going to address this, one of the questions that has been posted on the group. Cotton is not sustainable due to its high usage of water, pesticides, and energy. Can we consider organic cotton as sustainable as it only controls pesticides? So I'm just going to direct this question at you. Do you see a trend in going towards synthetics? Perhaps they're presumably more sustainable, or are there any alternatives to cotton that are emerging Maybe from an MAS lens, you can talk about other brands, and Stino, from a Nike lens, you can talk about it.
I don't think we can replace the cotton use with synthetic fully. It's always going to have to be a mix of both cotton and synthetic. How we arrive at either solution, that's the big unlock. There's obviously a lot of work around organic cotton, but even that in and of itself is not clean enough. And you can look at the impact if a large brand or several large brands go completely into organic cotton and bury the industry. So there's a responsibility from that sense. So you have to be able to balance what your material selections are. Then you have to be able to work your way up through the food chain, particularly if you're talking about synthetic. How can we embed more responsible practices or chemistry or engineering that eliminates some of the nasty byproducts that process creates. And then you can take it all the way down to how you actually create the product. So how are you using it responsibly? Where are you placing it? So it's really, it's kind of an end-to-end solution that you need to consider. So I don't see us ever replacing one over the other. It's always going to have to be a mix of both. The real question, though, is how do you arrive at either solution? Currently, there's not enough science in either field that have helped us to completely clean up those industries. But that's the biggest opportunity that we see in front of us.
So I agree with Michael as well on that point, but the thing is, on a brand like Patagonia, they have been working with organic cotton for a while for specific products that they have been doing. But currently we see the trend moving towards more of synthetic, but then again, I do not know like what the future plans are for Patagonia of doing that. So currently the underwear is moving away from the regular products that other brands do as dedicated underwears. They are more into the active sports underwear that they are promoting at the moment. So while they do that, the styles that they provide for us to work on is more synthetic based, of course with recycled polyester and nylon. A blend of cotton, currently they are working on certain testings. Probably they have kept it under wraps, maybe for competitive reasons, and probably they will share it with us when we meet them next. So there is some work going on making sure that how they can still keep the cotton part of the story going while competition is looking at a different angle on using synthetics.
Okay, so I'm going to have a follow-up question for you both. I think Professor Dialbis spoke about how we are looking at 80% of our waste, fabric waste, going back into landfill, and it's only 20% that comes back into the fabric supply chains again. What work are you doing at an MAS level or perhaps at a Nike level to look at technologies that can bring this 80% back into the supply chain?
I think it's easiest to break the problem down and look at it from two angles. One is from a consumer perspective. So once they're done with that product, what do they do with it? It's always been difficult to figure out a recapture mechanism. And even if you do recapture it, what do you do with the mountains of garments or mountains of shoes? There are mechanisms to recycle that back into either yarn, or in the footwear sense, we can actually upcycle that into other industries. There's still a lot of opportunity there, particularly on the consumer front, who we need to motivate and change that perspective of responsibility of what do I do with this piece. Where I think we can move the needle the most, though, is through partnership from a manufacturing sourcing perspective, which you spoke a lot about, is setting that standard of, okay, are we being responsible in how we're designing and making that product? And then recognizing that there's always going to be waste. What is it that we can do with that? Probably the lowest hanging fruit in that paradigm is taking that waste and figuring out a way to bring it back into the work stream. So either back into, say, the apparel industry, or foams back into the footwear industry. So I think those are the two opportunities, looking at it as a post-consumer and a post-manufacturing perspective.
So in Patagonia, the scheme that they work on the worn wear, what they do is they, on one side, they make sure that they discourage people to go for products over and over again, and they promote the reuse of it. And they have gone a couple of steps further by looking at buying back the product as well. And also you can go and trade it. So this is an initiative that they have started in to control up to a certain extent. So we need to see how much of the effect is taken off. But now we see the new millennials embracing this program, and then they are adapting onto this brand as well, purely because of the initiatives that they have taken. So they buy it through eBay too. They are selling some of the products that they, on the Won't Wear program that they do. So those are some of the initiatives that Patagonia has taken to control this. So let's wait and see how things move forward.
Okay, exciting. Professor De Alves, I'm just going to come back to you based on what Zaki and Stino just spoke about. You mentioned how biomimicry is becoming, is in fact a key solve that can work for the industry, work beyond the industry as well. We see the emergence of several biomaterials in the industry now, making quite a bit of noise. What type of trend do you see kind of panning out in the next decade where biomaterials become a key source for the apparel world?
Remember that we are looking at a fossil fuel system that is going to be, it's coming to an end quite soon. If not, we may say we have got fracking coming in place and changing United States natural gas. So we have extended the availability, but however, at cost. So we know that the sooner that we get rid of the fossil fuel addiction, the better. And most of these things that we talked about, the fibers, comes from the fossil fuel background. So it's very, very important that if you're talking about a sustainable future, that we get into the biomaterials to lead us to the next stage of materials. So talking about biomaterials is going to be the way, and someone who takes a leadership in that is going to really benefit. There's no question about that biomaterials coming, and then the biggest problem of environmental actually vanishes the moment that you embrace biomaterials. So we know that instead of working quite a lot, you now have, your time will tick on that, and it's going to be degradation, it's going to happen, so not a problem. But the point is mastering the art of biomaterials, and then having, of course, if you're talking about natural resources giving us the biomaterials, not going another synthetic biomaterial route, right? So again, then we have to look at some sustainable part. Remember, we are talking about 9 billion people on the planet in 2030 plus to 2050 to come. So that means we are looking at increased demand for a lot of things that we talk. We are not, SDG says we are not going to leave anybody behind. So that means fulfilling the aspirations too. So we have to innovate in the way that we meet expectation, and we have to do this shift. But again, we are talking about a finite resource base. So it's how do we work out this the input equation and output and what we call as a sustainable quality of life. So I think we have to think on modifying our demand perspective. Definitely that has to come in, but our level of satisfying has to be met differently. But you can be very, very creative with biomaterials. That's one thing that's very exciting.
Stino, any thoughts on that? Do you have any position on biomaterial that you guys are looking at from a Nike standpoint?
I love the term biomimicry. It's fantastic. It's been part of our design ethos and process for many years, but it's an extremely difficult unlock. On the simplest front, you can look at something like the gecko. We've studied geckos for years, okay? How can we change outsoles to mimic what a gecko's pad is, give you greater traction, which produces more durability, which reduces the amount of wear and tear on a product, which gives it longevity. So there's opportunities there from a design front. Taking it from a very ethereal perspective, you can also look at biomimicry in terms of what does a manufacturing cell look like? Where do we manufacture? Take it a step further and actually start thinking about organic farming or farmers markets, the concept that all your goods that you consume come within a 500-mile radius. Why not take inspiration from both of those elements and start to flip your manufacturing model? Maybe it's the Industrial Revolution 5.0. But in order to get there, one, we need to take lessons from what's already available, take partnerships that are starting to pop up in different parts of the world and start to make those connections. Trying to do this as a single brand or single entity is far too daunting. It's far too difficult. What we're finding now is that brands, particularly based on the inspiration from folks like Patagonia, are starting to open up, become more open source, tell their dirty little secrets, share that in the intent that you can actually solve that together. So that's kind of a long and roundabout way of just saying we're taking that inspiration from what's already around us and trying to figure out ways to either embed it into the design, embed it in how we make things, embed it in where we make things.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to shift to David, actually. There's a question on how does mass personalization affect an apparel manufacturing country like Sri Lanka? And how should we get ready for it? And there was quite a bit of focus on how your PLM system allows for mass customization.
Okay, so I think that today there are still a lot of manual tasks in product development process. Even from a designer, from a merchandiser, from a product developers, you can realize that maybe 60% or 80% of their task is related to administrative task. And they do not focus enough on their added value, on the creation, on the development. So the idea is really to streamline the processes, to eliminate the administrative tasks, to automate those tasks, to free the power of the development, the power of the creation. So that's, and I think that today, if you're talking now about Sri Lanka, there is this level of maturity. The organization, the management, and even also now the students, they are aware of this requirement and they are ready for this change. So all this also is related to change management. There are technology available. It's becoming popular. They try to understand, and now we need to make this change happening so that it's becoming a new standard of working. So that's how the common platform accompany this change.
Okay, thank you. And Professor Fernando, maybe you can add some thoughts on this. Is Sri Lanka ready as a country to, from a skill set point of view, to embrace these changes in the apparel industry, particularly what's happening on the customization end?
Well, mass customization gives the great opportunities for countries like Sri Lanka. We are far away from the market, but mass customization means it changes the business pattern, because now you manufacture and then you send to the markets overseas, then it goes to the stores, then the consumer buys the thing, and then you get the money. In mass customization, the money comes first. You place your order for what you want, and then it is manufactured to its personalized manufacturing. But, for example, men's suits have been mass customized in Europe. So if you can have the fabric base, or fabric, what is available, a customer anywhere in the world can order the garment that one needs. And if the fabric base is there, then one can through digitalization, the networking is so vast and so huge, you can place it anywhere and get manufactured from anywhere in the world and get to your doorstep a garment that will fully fit you in a matter of days. That is what is going to happen. So mass customization would mean single ply cutting, not piles of fabric. So it's single ply cutting. It's expensive, but the fact that the manufacturer gets the money up front makes a big difference to the business, so that you don't have to make and then get garments, thousands of garments rejected, or go for, you sell it at one price and 1 month later you sell it at 50% sale. These things don't happen. You buy, you pay your price and you pay the garment, and so that's a different business system altogether, and that's a way forward for us. It has tremendous advantages.
Great, thank you. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may add some points, because it's one of my favorite subjects, customization and on-demand manufacturing. I know that. Thank you for the challenges. Definitely, single ply is becoming also a common challenge subject nowadays. This is pushed by the consumers, and this is pushed also thanks to typically the Industry 4.0 possibilities. If all the actors, all the systems can communicate together, single ply or customization or made to measure can be sustainable. Okay. One subject around this, in fact, is the new is what is pushed by e-commerce or companies like Amazon, is much more than customization, is on-demand manufacturing, or to deliver a short order within a short time. This is really disruptive for most of the factories. They are used to produce 1,000 garments a day on the sewing line. And if tomorrow you ask them to produce 10 garments and the next hour another 15 garments, totally different, it's very costly for them to change. They don't have the right structure to be flexible. But now it's becoming possible. I mean, there is already this change of concept, this change of mindset, and thanks to the support of the technology, it's becoming possible. So we are working with all the major brands and to make happening this on-demand manufacturing on a sustainable way, okay, through direct integration, through a maximum of automation, and this will become soon sustainable.
Okay, thank you. Maybe, Stino, you can relate to this. So you can relate to some of the challenges that David is talking about, especially when you were talking about your West Hollywood experimental store. I'm sure you came across some of these challenges. And I'm going to link it back to one of the questions here. What sort of skill set does a designer need for tomorrow, for a designer who's going to join the industry?
Two very broad conversations. First, the customization topic. I think, simply put, if your organization does not have a strategy around what is customization, you're going to become that ostrich. You'll be obsolete. The challenges in customization is that field is becoming very competitive. And by that I mean the consumer demands are now, not 2 weeks from now, not place an order, have a factory halfway across the world produce something and ship it and you get it in 2 weeks. They want it in less than 2 hours. From a competitor standpoint, when you look at somebody like Amazon, and Amazon has now gone out and patented manufacturing cells. Why is a book company manufacturing or patenting a manufacturing cell? So that leads you to believe or understand that they're going to get very aggressive, not only how they deliver product, but also how they make, completely eliminating everybody else in the process. So what does that look like? We don't know, but we're just at the start of that. From a design perspective, sorry, can you repeat that question? The skill sets that a designer would need?
The reason I actually related that question was if you're looking at this sort of, mega trend in mass customization, how do these students over here respond to that challenge, especially from a design lens?
I think there's obvious fundamentals that need to be embedded in any type of designer, and that's trying to solve for what is the job to be done, first and foremost. Gain that skill set and understanding how to iterate rapidly for a problem that needs to be solved, rather than trying to provide a solution that doesn't have a problem. So once you embed that understanding, then the flexibility to be able to understand micro trends and to be able to design to that becomes exponentially stronger for that designer. So, things like being relevant internationally, being plugged into trends, those are all really important, but I think the skill set, what differentiates a designer from another designer is their ability to truly understand what is the problem that that person or that athlete or that consumer is asking and be able to deliver to that. Then the other piece of this, which what we really value, are designers that understand the concept of how you design for manufacturing. So it's the responsibility of understanding, not only do I have to design something, it needs to be made. So either made for that end consumer, whatever he or she is demanding, or, as we've talked about earlier, through the lens of sustainability and how that's being made. And sustainability at that level takes on a whole slew of different attributes. It's not just about being green, it's about being responsible. And so for the designers that are coming out in today's world, hats off to you. It is a tough world to enter, but it is super exciting. It's probably tough for me to understand because I'm of a different generation. I was farther on the right on David's graph. But that new generation, you are the consumer. You are already comfortable with all of those elements. So you're way ahead of us.
Okay, great. I'm just going to go back to two questions over here which seem to be related, and hopefully Professor De Alves and Zaki from a Patagonia lens, you can talk about it. Professor Ajit, brands love consumerism while sustainability hates it. What's the right balance, because brands chase competition faster than they chase sustainability? By the time brands realize the world is hurt, it would be too late. There's a related question regarding the philosophy behind Patagonia. Do you think Sri Lanka, as a major contributor to the apparel industry, will be able to change the mindset of the consumer?
Well, when you listen to the story of Patagonia, I suppose when persons start climbing and then you see the holes that you made on the rocks, and then to extrapolate that into if everybody starts doing that, there may not be such rock faces available in time to come, is an ethos that you probably have, and concepts, the idea that you have internalized into your whole operation. And that's a brand. I suppose I may not be a brand expert, but the concept of sustainability is that you will be doing good, but you will be doing good for the future as well. When you do it, you're not going to compromise. And it can be, I suppose, in the traditional sense of the word, it can be a decent brand value. So I don't see it as anomaly between the concept of sustainability not being against being brand, but then probably what we might be seeing is today's brands do not portray those elements of sustainability, not many anyway. So from that, or maybe sometimes brands have to rush back and identify some of their weaknesses and work back on one of their principles, and then to project themselves again, maybe to identify or renew themselves again, that okay, no, we are in this part as well, we are concerned, we are into this. So maybe you are redefining sometimes, but some may not be, some may have started along the same line. So I suppose I know we have situations where the climate change denial is still taking place, right? So we have the highest office in the United States denying climate change. So forget about the rest. And with all the science coming from there. So you really need to have those inbuilt value systems and why we are doing this, and then probably the brands. I mean, you shape yourself for that. And I suppose that's what we need. We need that new business way of thinking, that sustainability means that it's not all the time higher quarterly profits, higher sales, higher outlets, maybe the mall space as we were talking about may not be truly need to be worrying about that. But churn is a part of innovation. I mean, we need to accept churn, right? And so I suppose we need to think differently, and that part has to be embraced, and brands need to be redefined in that way.
You asked a different question for me, or is it like...
I think the question that followed was Sri Lanka as a country. How does Sri Lanka contribute to that, sustainable future? And maybe you can even talk about learnings from Patagonia to Amaze. How has it changed the way Amaze does business?
Patagonia's journey with Sri Lanka, they are also looking at different projects. Probably what I was talking to Tushari as well when we met is the opportunity that we can give them. Currently, if you look at for example, the print that they use, they are currently using minimized, well-screened chemicals for their printing purposes. But there is great opportunity. We can look at the natural side of bringing certain dye stuff that is there, that the students are working on. So if you can propose a story behind it and then go ahead and propose it, do a few trials and then do the testings that what the customer wants and project it for them, they probably will definitely embrace it. So those are areas that we can work with Patagonia at the moment. So that's something that I feel there is a lot of opportunity.
Great, thank you. I have a message from the organizers asking us to wind up in the next 5 minutes. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay, I think we're done. But just before we closed, I wanted to ask, perhaps, because we're talking about such revolutionary topics today, about the catwalk beyond 400 parts per million, and we're talking about digital that's going to take the industry by storm. If I were to ask each of the speakers to perhaps mention one technology or one piece of change that you think would make that impactful change for us in the next decade, for this industry, what would it be? Can we start with Professor Dialvi?
I'm really passionate on biomimicry because that means we are not differentiating ourselves from nature, but we are also showing our superior human innovativeness as well, seeing it and going beyond that, but we are not breaking it. So I'll put myself on biomimicry.
In this scramble for digitalization, my worry is that some people might get left behind and some countries might get left behind, and it would lead to great inequalities, and that would mean further trouble. So I think we have to embrace everyone and make sure we get everyone on board in this country like Sri Lanka. I was stressing, for example, the small and medium sector industry. We have to get them on board, otherwise they'll just disappear. And you will create, again, the gap between the rich and the poor will increase. And also if you take country-wise, also the same thing can happen. So one has to be very careful about digitalization, that we don't leave people, put them aside, but take everyone on board. That's very important. Thank you.
For me, the key words that will impact the next years is change. Everybody has to change their way of purchasing garments. They have to change their way of adopting new technologies, accepting technology. So it's about also change management, a change in managing the workforce. to empower more the people to generate a better creativity, a better efficiency. So that's easy to say. It's a major challenge, but if everybody works together, this change is possible.
If I had to choose one tool that will help particularly the new students succeed in this new world order, I would summarize it as open source. We need to collaborate. We need to have partnerships. We need to put our group genius together to be able to solve these problems. Not one individual and not one organization is going to do it alone. In order to be successful in the new world, we have to have open source. The consumers live that way. They feed off of each other with instantaneous information, instantaneous data, instantaneous imagery. So they're already flowing in an open source environment that is personalized per their needs. So I think if there was a tool such as open source, that's more of a mindset, but to me, I think that's what we really need to gravitate towards, because what that leads to, again, is that notion of group genius, creating as a whole.
So on the, from my side, what I feel is, of course, the new gen thinking, what's newness that comes in is very key, because that's how the world is moving towards. So nobody should curtail that or put a stop to it. It has to move on at that speed. But then again, brands like Patagonia, who has endorsed themselves to make sure to make decisions on a very cautious manner. So this more of collaboration and the awareness levels that has to be increased in such a way that though they keep evolving around to meet the needs of the consumer for that specialized version that they want to do, personalized thing. We also need to enlighten them what sort of a damage it can cause if you go on the wrong track. So it's more of collaboration, partnership, and the awareness that will make a more safer world for tomorrow.
Thank you. So I think we're done here, and thank you. This has been a great conversation, and congratulations again. Thank you.
We'd like to invite you to please remain a few moments on stage, because we've got tokens of appreciation for each of you to hand out these special tokens of appreciation that have been designed by undergraduates of the Fashion Design and Product Development degree. The first set, it's my pleasure to call forward Ms. Tushari Vanyarachi, Senior Lecturer, Department of Textile and Clothing Technology. If we could have you on stage, please. Thank you for joining us. First token is out to Professor Lactas Fernando. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Next, we have a token to Professor Ajit De Alvis. Speaking on beyond 400 ppm, thank you very much for that presentation. Next token is out to Hamdoun Zakaria, sharing the Patagonia story, ladies and gentlemen. Next token is out to David Leprovost, shared with us on Technological Innovations lecture offering. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Vanyarachi, for handling those presentations. To handle the next set of token presentations, it's my pleasure to call forward Dr. Rivini Matararachi, Senior Lecturer, Department of Textile and Clothing Technology, University of Moratuwa. Next token is out to Michael Steen, sharing the Nike case study. Thank you so much for that. Let's give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Our next token is out to Mr. Damita Ahangama on behalf of our sponsors who made this evening possible, on behalf of Electra and Apparel Technologies. Let's give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. And last but not least, to quite an underappreciated role, but it's undoubtedly important, our moderator, Shehani Gomez. Next, this one's out to you. Let's give her a big hand, ladies and gentlemen, for moderating and managing that discussion. Thank you so much for handling those presentations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that officially concludes Fashioning the Future, our special forum on sustainable practices and digitalization for the fashion industry, presented by the Department of Textile and Clothing Technology at the University of Moratuwa.